little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. What could be the biggest challenge for the King yet? His Majesty is visiting Canada amidst the brewing diplomatic row after President Trump suggested Canada could become its 51st state. I'll also be asking whether Reform UK is becoming a left-wing political party as it continues to commit to big spending plans and goes quieter on tax cuts. We'll be revealing how your hard-earned money is being spent on loan sharks in Malawi in the latest foreign aid blunder. Plus, State of the Nation Book Club returns in epic fashion with historian Tim Bouvery's Allies at War, the politics of defeating Hitler. We'll be bringing you the inside story of how the Allies saved the world from Nazism. That's the latest news on State of the Nation, which starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and broadcaster, Matthew Stadlen. As ever, let me know your views. It's a crucial part of the programme, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Sam Francis.
Jacob, thank you, and a very good evening to you. Just after 8 o'clock, the top story tonight. Police say it is a miracle there weren't more serious injuries after a car ploughed into crowds in Liverpool last night. The King says he is deeply shocked and saddened, with the Prince and Princess of Wales also calling it a heartbreaking end to what should have been a joyful day. Princess Anne visited Liverpool this afternoon to meet emergency crews and praised their remarkable bravery. 11 people remain in hospital, all in a stable condition, and are said to be recovering well, according to Merseyside Police. Detective Chief Superintendent Carrie Jondrill says officers are still continuing to analyse footage of that crash.
We have arrested a 53-year-old man from West Derby on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving offences and driving whilst unfit through drugs. He remains in custody where he is being interviewed. We have a total of 65 confirmed casualties, many of whom required hospital treatment, and our officers and family liaison officers are providing specialist support to a large number of these victims.
In Canada, King Charles has made history, becoming the first British monarch in nearly 50 years to deliver Canada's speech from the throne. His visit follows an invite from Prime Minister Mark Carney, seen as a pointed response to Donald Trump's claim that Canada could become America's 51st state. Speaking in Ottawa, he praised the country's transformation since his mother's visit back in 1977. calling Canada a truly multicultural and independent country. Well, His Majesty also recalled past global crises from the Cold War to the war on terror and warned that Canada faces new threats today.
Today, Canada faces another critical moment. Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear and ones which the government is determined to protect.
You're up to date just after 8 o'clock. A full roundup from me at 9 o'clock. Now, though, it's back to Jacob.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. His Majesty the King is in his realm of Canada in what could be his greatest test yet. His Britannic Majesty's government is in a predicament over this because the person of the sovereign is the key diplomatic link between the United Kingdom and Donald Trump's White House. Yet his Canadian Majesty is the head of state of a country that Trump wants to annex and has hit with brutal tariffs. As regular viewers know, I am broadly a Trump supporter. I think his robust good sense and political drive are essential. However, I am a loyal subject of my king in all his realms. Thus, I support Canada in its row with the United States. Canada is and cannot be a vassal state. It is a sovereign nation with its own traditions and history intrinsically intertwined with our own. Remember, Canada backed us immediately in 1939 at the beginning of the Second World War, while the United States took all our money and only joined after Hitler declared war on it. Canada fought alongside Britain in the Gulf Wars in Bosnia and Afghanistan and Libya. It's one of our greatest allies and closest cultural partners. Canada is a country grounded in constitutional monarchy, in parliamentary democracy and the rule of law, systems Britain helped shape, but which Canada now owns entirely, proudly and independently. When the King visits Canada, he does not go as a guest, but rather as head of state of a nation that has chosen to keep the crown, not out of obligation, but out of respect, continuity, and indeed affection. And this visit is truly pivotal in the future of inter-Anglo relations. The special relationship is real when the Americans want it to be. And there is no doubt Donald Trump is enamoured by the UK because of his Scottish roots and because, like so many people, he adored the late Queen. But he must also understand that Western allegiances ought to extend beyond our two nations. By threatening Canada in such an incendiary manner, he has not only risked the US-Canadian relationship, but the US-UK relationship as well, not least that with the King. It is in moments like this that prove the efficacy of constitutional monarchy, the great symbol that unifies all above politics, a living link to history and tradition, and a continuity in times of increasing uncertainty. The good news is that Donald Trump loves the British monarchy, so perhaps, just perhaps, it ought to be restored. And rather than Canada becoming the 51st state, the USA ought to become His Majesty's 16th realm. It would just about make up for losing Barbados. As ever, let me know your views via mailmog at gbnews.com. Well, I'm now joined by a most distinguished commentator, the former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, and a friend of the programme, Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining me. There's a conundrum for Donald Trump, isn't there, that he loves the King, but he doesn't like lefty Canada. But every time he's rude about Canada, he must upset the King of Canada.
Right. I don't think he's quite figured that out. What Trump has done with respect to Canada, perhaps more than any other country in 4 months in office, is rip up decades, really almost centuries of effort to try and get along with our neighbors to the north as friends and allies. We'll repair the damage, but it's equivalent to shooting U.S.-Canada relations in the foot, and it really stems from Trump's own idea that relations with other countries are the equivalent of his personal relations with their head of state. He never liked Justin Trudeau, and so calling Canada the 51st state and calling Trudeau Governor Trudeau was a way of trolling him, and it's caused enormous damage. I think Mark Carney did as well as could be expected in his first visit with Trump after winning election, and maybe has pushed a lot of this back. Now we'll just have arguments over tariffs as opposed to arguments over sovereignty.
And it's very interesting, isn't it, that actually Donald Trump helped elect Mark Carney, that instead of having a right-wing conservative Canadian government, thanks to Donald Trump's attacks on Canada, it went sharply to the left. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, this shows Trump really doesn't think much farther than the end of his nose, and he felt good about trolling Justin Trudeau. I don't know what his advisors in the White House were saying, but when he began that, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party's numbers in Canada just fell off a cliff, all the way to the point where now Trump will have to deal with somebody who's been governor of the Bank of England and governor of the Bank of Canada on these very difficult economic issues. If he had thought about it, or if any typical politician had thought about it for about 2 seconds, just would have left it alone.
And what is he trying to achieve? Because I assume he doesn't really think that Canada's going to say, oh, yes, please, we'd love to be the 51st state. What is the game plan of upsetting Canada?
I think it's just the way Trump behaves with people he doesn't like. As I say, he didn't like Justin Trudeau for a lot of reasons, not without some merit on his side. But the fact is, saying Canada would become the 51st state would make an impossible consequence for American politics. Number one, we wouldn't end up with Canada as one state. It would come in as several states, given its population. They would vote predominantly Democratic, so we would have more Canadian senators, more Democratic senators, more Democrats in the House, and in the Electoral College, a greater likelihood of electing Democratic presidents. So for all of us who are conservative Republicans, we love Canada and we hope they stay Canadian.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, if it became the 51st state, it would mean deposing the king. And Donald Trump is extremely pleased to have been invited on a state visit. He likes those sort of occasions. Does he not realise that this is very rude to the king, who is also my king, who I don't want to be offended by anybody?
I'm not sure he understands the relationship between the monarchy and Canada. Remember, this is a man who, sitting in that great grand room at Chequers, meeting Theresa May in the spring of 2018, on being informed that her government considered the chemical weapons attack on the Skripals just a few months before, thought it was dangerous for many reasons, among which it was an attack by one nuclear power on another. And Donald Trump turned to Theresa May and said, "Oh, do you have nuclear weapons?"
Right. Oh, well, that's a good point on which to end. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bolton. With me now, it's Steve Gill, the US talk radio host, who served in the Bush and Clinton administrations. I wonder if you can explain this to me, because I'm a fan of Donald Trump. I would unquestionably have voted for him. But I don't understand why he wants to be a friend of the king's when he's trying to persuade the king to give up being the king of Canada.
Well, first of all, I'm going to disagree with my friend Ambassador Bolton on a couple of points. I don't think Donald Trump has seriously ever said or meant that we should take Canada in as a 51st state. And I would say that the dispute with Keir Starmer is more direct than the dispute with the king. Keir Starmer can't even hold on to the Chagos Islands and may be giving up the Falklands. So if I'm in Alberta or Saskatchewan, I'm not feeling real good that Keir's going to fight to keep me as part of the empire.
Oh, well, he's not. Keir Starmer hasn't said anything because he's as weak as water. And I agree with you on Chagos, and I agree with you on maintaining the Falklands, and I wish we hadn't done the surrender to Europe last week. But let's try to stick to the great Donald Trump, because what is he trying to achieve? Because Ambassador Bolton pointed out, if Canada did join the US, they wouldn't vote Republican.
Well, again, we would only want Alberta and Saskatchewan. I don't think we'd want the liberal parts of Canada that would vote to put more liberals in the Senate and in the House. But there's no serious idea of moving Canada in. I think that this is all part of the tariff dispute. And keep in mind, we're told constantly from the Canadian side that high tariffs are punitive to your consumers. Well, then why is Canada charging their great friends, the Americans, 250% tariffs on things like dairy and beef? Canada charges a 25% tariff on orange juice, and I don't think they're doing it to protect the orange groves in Manitoba.
No, indeed. I've visited Manitoba many times, and in Winnipeg there aren't many orange groves. And so this is all about a negotiating position. But it's had a real consequence, hasn't it? Because Mark Carney has been elected, and it would have been a Conservative government anyway. So something that perhaps Donald Trump said in semi-jest has had a direct political impact.
I think Carney was likely to get elected anyway. And keep in mind, and you know this as well as your listeners and viewers, that he narrowly won, does not have a solid government, and will have to face election again in about a year as the Canadian economy continues to tumble, as he's already backing off on the retaliatory tariffs on the U.S., and that we will see the tariffs on U.S. goods and services come down. And frankly, Donald Trump's point was a good one. The Canadians, again, have a big, beautiful ocean on both sides, like the U.S., but they depend for their own defense on the U.S. and our military-industrial complex. And too many Canadians, in my view, depend on the American healthcare system, because your free system in Canada has them coming across the border, paying for insurance to get better healthcare in the U.S. than they can get in Canada. So there are bases of a better relationship that can be developed if we treat each other more fairly, more friendly, and not just in tariffs, but across the board.
So the essential point is that Canada's been freeloading off the United States, and that you love Canada, great place, you very much like the King, but you want to stop the freeloading.
And we like Canadians. I don't think there's any big dispute whether it's with Canadians or with Brits. We get along. Governments sometimes don't get along, whether it's Canada, Britain, or anywhere else. People tend to get along, and I think this has been blown up to more of a dispute than it actually is in terms of where we're headed down the line. I think Carney has bigger problems at home domestically, economically and otherwise, that should be his focus. And again, the tariff battle is something that I think he used in the election. Trump was something he used in the election to distract voters from the reality of their lives rather than what he was trying to do politically.
And that next time he won't have that card to play. And what effect do you think the state visit will have on Donald Trump? Will he mind that the King has opened the Canadian Parliament?
Oh, I don't think he'll mind at all. Again, he has great affection for the royal family, had great affection for the Queen. And I think that, again, the relationships between the U.S. and Britain have sustained themselves despite Keir Starmer sending people to vote and work against Donald Trump, the foreign minister of Britain saying disparaging things about Donald Trump. For as much talk there is about Donald Trump's thin skin, he showed pretty thick skin when it comes to the Brits.
Well, yes, the only thing I have in common with Donald Trump is that David Lamb is called both of us Nazis. I think he was wrong on both counts. Thank you for joining me. Keep on campaigning for lower tariffs with your trading partners. I want the UK to get rid of all tariffs on the US and back free trade. But, Steve, thank you very much for joining me this evening. In a moment, I'll be asking whether Reform has become a socialist political party. Has Nigel gone lefty? Find out why shortly.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
100 years young, and you took part, of course, in the World War II.
Yes.
But you were a Wren. Tell us about what you did to help keep the country safe from Nazis.
Well, I did my best. Well, I was so determined that the Germans weren't going to come into our country, the Nazis. And, you know, we all felt the same. We were so angered that they should dare to even think of coming into our country. They'd bombed London like crazy, and they hadn't got it. And we fought them back, and we fought them to the coast, and then we pushed them over into France, and we pursued them there.
This is you back in your service days. Tell us your happiest memories of those wonderful times.
Oh, good heavens. I just think it was meeting people from other parts of Britain and other types of people, you know, different backgrounds, for example. And it was just so releasing of ourselves, and we were dying to push the Nazis back so that they couldn't conquer. It wasn't the German people, they were suffering as badly as we were, but it was just, we were so determined in England then. It wasn't Britain. We were fighting for England, the Welsh were fighting for Wales, and the Scottish were fighting for Scotland.
GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and now here was Reform leader Comrade Farage earlier today.
Now, they, of course, right now are absolutely terrified of reform. And if you think the Conservatives had a bad day on May the 1st, arguably, Labour did even worse. We completely wiped them out. This government is off to the worst start of any government since Eden and the Suez Crisis in 1956. They are collapsing in terms of support. Their response to us is just to turn on the Labour lie machine.
And while all the momentum is behind Nigel, he has faced criticism for turning Reform into a left-wing party, what with its promises of nationalisation of benefits and big spending plans. Well, my most pugnacious panel is with me, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and broadcaster, Matthew Stadlen. Kelvin, he's comparing Starmer to Eden, but actually that worked out rather well. Next election, the Tories got a majority of 100 with a new leader.
Yes, they did. So that, I drove around the M25 to a business meeting today, and I was listening to 5 Live, which I don't normally do, so nobody turn off now, and I listened to the whole speech. Do you know what? It was a stunning bravura performance, of which if I were the leader of the Labour Party or the leader of the Conservative Party, I would be having my head in my hand saying, I am going to have to work out whether that job pushing a broom outside Morrison's is still available for me in 2029. Now, so a fantastic performance. And what he said about Lucy Connolly, stunning, shouldn't be in there, the excessive and all the rest of it. The only issue I don't enjoy, and I think it's an error, however, as things stand, Farage is the most skilled politician of our age. He probably knows a lot more than me, is starting to say to people, I am going to effectively increase the debt of the country by coming up with various things on the two-cap policy, giving money back to the pensioners, all this kind of stuff, I think is an error. I think people like the fact that he's tough on the economy as well as some of the social issues, which I think he's wholly and completely in line with. But look, I listened to that thing and I thought to myself, oh my God, Kemi Badenoch, thank you and good evening. It was over for her.
But also Keir Starmer, because he's beginning to eat some of Labour's lunch. He's making the promise in the Labour Party on the two-child policy more difficult. It's pressure coming on in that direction. It's, as he was saying, the local election results were very difficult for Labour.
I don't think Nigel Farage is a socialist, for a start. What I do think is that he is an opportunist, and he, as he is in opposition and has never been in power in this country, is able to pick and mix. So that's the first thing. I actually watched the speech. I didn't listen to it. I was on a day out with a family on the mobile phone watching it. I thought of course, he's a brilliant campaigner. I don't dispute that for a second. A hugely effective politician. I thought it was rather underwhelming, actually, today. There's been a bombshell YouGov poll, which I'm sure you're both aware of, that came out today that says that when given the choice, when Brits given the choice between Starmer and Farage as Prime Minister, 44% want Starmer and 29% want Farage. And actually, it's worse than that for Farage. When given the option of Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, and Farage, 41% want Ed Davey and 27% want Nigel Farage. Now, this is a massive hurdle for him, even in a five-party split at the next election, if politics is really redrawn in the way that it seems to be, because he is going to face what is at the moment the fact that the overwhelming majority of people in this country do not want to see Farage as Prime Minister.
Well, can I just say about that what people say to those polls and actually what they do sometimes turns out to be different. And literally, a few weeks ago, they were saying that one thing would happen in the polls, and actually what happened was one of the greatest landslides during a non-election period took place. So I don't really accept that. Look, he has an issue. He says so himself. He says, look, people don't know me. I've never been Prime Minister. Therefore, I have to try and persuade people that I am potential leadership material. But can I just say to you, I'd like to see what the next YouGov poll shows. My bet with all this lot going on, that Labour will be down beneath 20% the way things are going for them at the moment. It is a spectacular performance. And do you know what? He's been waiting, I suspect, for 30 years to say a lot of this stuff.
I think, actually, that Farage's problem is that the British people do know him or feel that they know him. We've lived with Farage.
Why do his numbers keep on going up then? Because if your view is correct, you would say, oh, we know what he's like, he's going down that way. In that case, he's going like that.
There's no doubt, Kelvin, that Reform have been doing well in the polls. There's no doubt they did well in the local elections. There's no doubt they did well in that by-election. But people on a national level have lived with Farage and his politics for 20 years. We know he's effective. And still, when you're asked a question directly, do you want him or do you want one of these guys? The answer is emphatic. On the substance of what he said today, I thought it was quite clever of him to get out ahead of Labour on the two-child benefit cap. But I thought something, and I have to say this, I thought something he said was disgraceful. He can be quite persuasive on certain things, but this was disgraceful. You mentioned Lucy Connolly. We all have our views on whether the sentence was too harsh. My very personal view, having read the Court of Appeal judgment, is that I think it is too harsh because of the way that she phrased her works and because I think of a lack of directness in the connectivity. That's just my personal view. But what Farage said was that while she shouldn't have said what she said, millions of mothers in this country were feeling the same in that moment after Stockport.
Yeah, well, I agree with him.
And I'm sorry, but that is an absolutely abhorrent thing for a potential Prime Minister to say. Why? Because what was in the tweet? It was saying, I'm disinterested, effectively, in whether hotels with human beings in them are burnt down. And for Farage to say that millions of...
does not matter.
Of course it matters.
What matters is the actual violence.
That also matters. But Farage said that millions of mothers were thinking the same, which was, for all I care, burn down the asylum hotels. That is a shameful thing for Farage to say. He let himself down very badly.
And you go and pick up your kids from school, you go shopping. It's a burst of anger. It's not like proper violence.
A burst of anger against innocent people.
Because judges aren't allowed to tweet, and therefore they have no idea what the social media world works like. Social media
leave the sentence aside. I've already said in my personal view that the sentence I think was too harsh.
What would you have given them, Matthew? What would you have given them?
I'm not sure.
What would you have given them? Well,
what I am sure of...
You say it's too much. What is too much?
No one cares what I think about the consequences there.
You just said you have a view.
What I think people care about is the character of Farage. And while he can sometimes in some ways be persuasive, and as I've said, he's very effective, what really matters here is that he was saying, a frontline politician, that millions of mothers were thinking in that moment, post-Southport, for all I care, burn down the hotels with human beings and children in them, and that's disgraceful.
All right, well, that really is my most pugnacious panel. Coming up is the inside story of how your hard-earned money ending up funding Malawi loan sharks. Quite extraordinary.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello, well, there's plenty of sunshine across Europe and it's feeling warm there too, with some spells of rain or thunderstorms across the east. Now, we have lighter winds across the Canary Islands and Madeira, plenty of sunshine across Portugal and Spain, likewise as we go into Italy, but there will be a few showers across eastern areas, perhaps some thunderstorms developing as well. Plenty of sunshine then on offer through the rest of the week and temperatures rising nicely, highs of 30. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Overall, a bit brighter and a bit drier for most of us tomorrow, probably feeling a little bit warmer as well. Today was a bit dull and dismal for a good chunk of the UK thanks to this tangle of weather fronts that's now shimmying away. Low pressure though still dominating to the north of Scotland, still quite breezy here with a few showers, but generally clear skies across eastern and southern Scotland, and the rain is petering out for most elsewhere, but this line may persist from East Anglia across the Midlands and into mid and north Wales. Still some heavy bursts of rain mixed in with that this evening and through the night. Temperatures, well, we've got the clear skies across Scotland. We will dip well down into single figures, but across the south actually staying pretty mild through the nights, and generally here a much drier and brighter day, certainly across southern parts of England. But there will be this zone across parts of Norfolk, Suffolk, through the Midlands up towards Wales, where it will be pretty dull, still with further outbreaks of rain to come during tomorrow morning. The odd shower elsewhere, but overall much drier day for Northern Ireland. Seen plenty of sunshine today across eastern Scotland, and a fine start here to come tomorrow, but still some showers coming into northern and western parts of Scotland, blown in on a brisk breeze, but that wind tending to ease through the day. In fact, for all of us, the wind's not as strong tomorrow. There will still be that zone of cloud and showery rain. That'll drift down towards the London area, so some showers in the southeast for the afternoon. In fact, generally across eastern England, southern Scotland, 1 or 2 heavy showers are possible, but certainly for many, it's a much brighter, much drier day. Bit more sunshine and temperatures higher as well. Now, temperatures will tick up further come the end of the week, but as you can see, Thursday's likely to start pretty grey with further rain. That rain likely to be heavy and quite persistent across Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it'll also be fairly breezy. In the south, though, for England and Wales, it may well get a bit brighter, staying quite murky around western coast, but some sunny spells are possible, and temperatures will be ticking up through this week. Bye for now.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word. Welcome back. So, how did your hard-earned money end up funding loan sharks in Malawi? Well, in what is the latest foreign aid blunder, the Mail on Sunday has revealed that the Foreign Office has been funding a £4.5 million scheme to alleviate, it would be, wouldn't it, climate change in Malawi. The catch is that instead of actually paying for specific projects or institutions, it's simply been sending money to villagers directly, about £450 each on average, in the hope that they would spend their money wisely on climate change. Instead, however, they've been setting up loan sharks and paying for illegal migration. Well, my pugnacious pals still with me, Calvin Mackenzie and Matthew Stanton. Matthew, I mean, this really is the triumph of hope over experience, isn't it? You give people £450 worth of cash and you think they're going to put a solar panel on their roof, and instead they buy a few pints of beer and do a little bit of loan sharking.
The most important element of there are 2 elements here. One is climate change and one is the foreign aid budget. And to see someone as highly intelligent and articulate yourself A knight of the realm. A knight of the realm. Someone who was in frontline politics and held government positions of great responsibility. For you to talk of climate change in a mocking way does you no service whatsoever.
OK, that's
Climate change is real. It's partly man-made. And if we collectively, of course not just us Brits, but the world does not come together and address it, as I keep saying on programmes such as yours, we will have migration crises the likes of which you cannot imagine.
This is all fine. It's beautifully wrapped up. Your wrapping paper and your bow on top. Excellent. But the truth is, this £450 doesn't do anything to climate change. It makes absolutely no jot of difference. It's a really stupid scheme.
Look, first of all, of course, we should have a foreign aid budget, and that has now been squeezed.
Well, this is why it should be squeezed, because it's wasted.
Let me make the point, because you asked the question. It's been squeezed now like a lemon because of our need to ratchet up our defence spending. I support the ratcheting up of our defence spending, but it is now much reduced from the 0.7% or whatever it was. I think now is due to be 0.3%. Many people think let's just do away with it because we have people who are homeless. And believe me, as someone on the left, I want to deal with our homeless situation, not just rough sleepers, but homelessness generally. But we cannot simply be an island in every sense. If we are not show responsibility towards people across the world as well, that does not just those people a disservice, it does us a disservice. The British people are far more generous than that.
But they don't really want to give £450 to people just waste, do they?
They don't want to give them... They don't want to... Actually, the strange thing that I found about that was they also handed out phones to the villagers. There's 8,500 of them, and in order so that the transfer of the money could come direct to them. I think our issue is, this is where probably Matthew and I vary, I am not in favour of giving any money to anybody right now. I want us to pay down our debts, our own debts, and then once we're in a reasonable circumstance, I'm happy to look at what other people in the world may want. And I think this particular idea is as ludicrous as the other one I saw the other day, which was we sent 133 million to Pakistan, OK? We also sent something like 100 million to Afghanistan. Why are we bothering? Why are we bothering? Afghanistan, for instance, treat its people like dirt. They just want our money and they laugh at us when we give it to them. To these people, the people of Malawi, it's a very nice thing to do. Do you know what? Why don't Labour, actually, if they've got 450 quid, or the Tories, why don't they send it to some of the pensioners who haven't got the money for...
Let me respond to that, if I may, very quickly. First of all, there would always be an excuse or a reason not to give money to anyone else in the world. Because there will always be people in our own country who are in need. And that would make us weaker, both morally...
Why does it make us weaker?
Let me just make the point, because we have a responsibility to people beyond our own borders.
No, we don't. Give money to charity.
In a relative... Hang on.
But Matthew, you can give money personally.
But I think we have a responsibility...
Tonight's fee.
Let me just make my fee.
Tonight's fee to charity.
You have no idea how much money I do or don't give to charity. We have a responsibility as a country beyond our borders. Of course, it's great. But where I do agree is, of course, it should be scrutinised. And if they are paying money for things that don't work, then I would be the first to say, get it right.
All right, well, let's see what the Foreign Office had to say. The Foreign Office's business case, signed off by the British High Commissioner to Malawi, Her Excellency Fiona Ritchie, argues that there is a large amount of evidence on the effectiveness and efficiency of cash transfers. Well, I'm sure that's true if you're receiving the cash. In other news, some you may recall Sir Keir Starmer's visit to Albania, where he had planned to ask if they would take failed asylum seekers, only to be given a flat-out no by the Albanian Prime Minister in front of the world's media. He's the chap who knelt in front of the Prime Minister of Italy. Well, now it's emerged the PM plans to ask Kosovo if it will take failed asylum seekers instead. Well, back to my panel. Kelvin, why doesn't he just ring up the president of Rwanda and say, look, you've got a scheme, we've paid for the buildings. Why is he running around all these funny places?
The reason it has to do with that is I think that other countries are now using up those spaces which we had paid for. That was an absolute shocking idea. And now the idea that Starmer is hawking himself around Europe saying, please, I need some help. Help me. He goes to Kosovo. I don't know Kosovo. Right, under this system, the downside to it, of course, is we only will have people there, allegedly, who can't even pass the minimal test of being allowed into our country. I actually, personally, I don't want any more. I don't want any more migrants of any kind, say for 5 years. Let's do it until 2029, when we'll have a kind of referendum on this. Honestly, we have done our bit. We have taken 10 million people in over the last 10 to 15 years, and we are full up. Just have a look at your schools, look at your GP surgeries. Honestly, we've done our bit. We don't need Kosovo. Just turn the people back.
Isn't this basically an admission that the hurried decision to cancel Rwanda when they got into office was ill thought through, and now they're scrabbling around to try other places to do the same thing?
Just on the point of the 10 million, I mean, let's just be clear. The vast majority of those people were invited here. The vast majority of those people
I'm prepared to give them work visas. What I'm not prepared to do is make them British citizens.
Let's answer the question, actually.
Of course, yes.
Rwanda was there. It may not have been perfect. It may have needed some further negotiation. There may have been bits they weren't happy with. But now, a year later, with nothing happening, they're scrabbling around with every country that they can get an audience with. Surely this shows it was a mistake to abandon Rwanda hurriedly.
There's no doubt there's an issue here. And the reason there's an issue is partly because vast numbers of these people who are coming over the channel by boat, which overall is a tiny fraction of the immigration figures that Kelvin was saying. But huge numbers of them actually get asylum. Now, you might say that the test isn't strong enough. Huge numbers of them get asylum. I am someone who obviously accepts that, A, we have to have borders, and B, we cannot possibly accept all of the world's refugees. We accept far fewer, say, than France and I think some other countries in Europe, certainly fewer. It is really, really difficult, therefore, to know how to tackle this issue, because in a theoretical world, if limitless people tried to get here, at some point we'd have to stop. We'd have to stop it somehow. How do we deal with it? Rwanda, I don't think, was going to work on a practical level. There weren't enough spaces. I don't think it would have been a sufficient deterrent. And also, morally, ethically, Rishi Sunak basically did get the Commons to vote and pretend to ourselves that Rwanda was safe. It's not the bloke got 99% of the vote, Kagame. 99% of the vote. It wasn't a safe country.
That was a perfectly reasonable judgment for ministers to make.
I disagree. On Kosovo, I don't think it would be much of a deterrent, even if it happens. And the reason is because, as Kelvin says, the people who we would be sending there are people who have failed to get asylum in the first place.
Also, Kosovo's not very far away.
I don't think it would make a major dent
from Kosovo,
on the issue.
they'll come straight back. It's not that far.
So let's face the issue that none of these actually, Rwanda wouldn't have solved the issue. Kosovo won't solve it. Nothing will solve it. Somebody has to actually say, we don't want, we are full up, one way or another. Taking your point, we will take in some people, but we'll do it the way Dubai does it. We do it on visas, right? And if in any way you cross anything, boom, you're out, and you don't get a British citizen.
The problem is reform claim.
You don't get a British citizenship.
The problem is reform, and there's a lot of talk about reform, and as you rightly pointed out earlier, they've done well in the polls. Reform claim that they would, if they were in power, simply take people back and dump them on French beaches. Yeah. You, as someone who is a minister of the Crown, know perfectly well that in the real world was not possible.
I wanted to do that. It simply isn't.
Why is that?
Why isn't it possible? Because the French wouldn't take them.
Yeah, I know, but then we have a problem.
We're not going to declare war.
Why don't we have a problem with France?
We're not going to declare war.
We've never been friends.
Anyway, thank you very much to my panel, putting the pug into pugnacious today. Coming up, as I like to keep you up to date with the latest news, we'll be revealing the inside story of how the Allies defeated Hitler with the historian Tim Bouverie as we review his new book, Allies at War, The Politics of Defeating Hitler.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns next Tuesday from 7 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, we were talking about Kosovo and aid, and the mail mogs have come in. Jason says, it's absolutely ridiculous when we have pensioners who can't afford to heat their homes and sit in their houses in their coats. We give money which ends up in the hands of corrupt foreign politicians. Well, Jason, I entirely agree with you, and this scheme seems madder than most. Claire says, no, we don't have a responsibility to other countries, not when Brits are suffering at home. It's easier for well-off people to declare all the hard-pressed taxpayers should be throwing their hard-earned money abroad. I again agree, it's a matter for private charity. If you want to give to aid to the church in need. It's a great overseas charity. And Alan says, our population density is 10 times that of France. We cannot keep letting people in. Well, that's a very good set of mail mogs. Thank you very much. Now it's time for State of the Nation's Book Club. Three men, one war. Churchill, Roosevelt and Stalin led the alliance that defeated Hitler. But behind the scenes, tension, mistrust and secret deals. In Allies at War, historian Tim Bouverie takes us inside the uneasy partnership that won the war but laid the groundwork for the Cold War. It's a great pleasure, Tim, to welcome you onto GB News to discuss your latest book, Allies at War, which has just come out. I've had the pleasure of both reading it and listening to it as an audiobook, which I would strongly recommend to people because it's such fun getting the author's emphasis as you're listening to a book. But why did you want to write this book? What part of the Second World War hadn't been covered by other people already?
Well, it's a very good question. Thousands and thousands of books exist on the Second World War, and I think we're all very familiar and have been reminded in this VE Day 80th anniversary year of the ways that the Allies defeated the Axis militarily. But the actual politics of it is, I think, a less understood area of study. And my previous book was on appeasement in the 1930s, and that was where politics was meant to have failed. And then I think there is a general sense that politics just stopped, that the war began and this became a purely military enterprise. And also an idea that this alliance which won the war was somehow inevitable, that is the British-American-Soviet alliance. But it wasn't inevitable in the slightest. It wasn't even desired at the beginning of the war. The British didn't want the Americans to fight for them. The Americans certainly didn't want to fight. And the Soviets, the Russians, were collaborating with Hitler in a carve-up of Eastern Europe. It is only because of the completely unforeseen collapse of France in 6 weeks that this alliance is even contemplated. And so I wanted to write a book which looked at Allied politics in its entirety, from the start of the war in 1939 right through to the end, and included not just the big three, that is Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, Soviet Union, Britain and the United States, but also all of the other important factors, including some neutral countries like Spain and Ireland, Turkey, but also nationalist China, which was an ally of the anti-Axis coalition, and the partisans of Yugoslavia, and British relations with General de Gaulle and the Free French, and also the war that the British fought against the Vichy French. So the first justification for it was scope. Secondly, I think I wanted to dig below the level of the big three, and by which I mean trying to unearth as many documents connected to those who accompanied them and those who advised them. And I went through 100 different archives in Britain and America and did find quite a lot of new material, which I think adds subtlety, nuance, and often a new take on some familiar episodes.
One of the things that really interests me is that through all of this, in the end, America treats the USSR much better than it treats the United Kingdom. So the USSR doesn't have to pay for Lend-Lease, it gets it for free. At the end, Roosevelt thinks he can deal with Stalin, and Stalin's his friend, and tries to cut Churchill out. But thinking about this, it's not so much poor Blighty, it's all throughout a matter of raw power. So that when Vichy France begins, we sink the French fleet. Why? Because we've got power and they haven't. When we're dealing with allies who are weaker than us, we express brute power. And sometimes we express more power than we've really got and bluff, and are remarkably successful. Your history of Iraq and what happens there is absolutely fascinating. And America does that to us. But it does leave us slightly weakened, very weakened at the end of the war.
Yes, I think that is right. It is also due to the fact that even the Americans didn't anticipate how swiftly the British Empire would collapse following the end of the Second World War. They still thought it would exist in some shape or form for longer than it ended up doing. And therefore, the idea of Britain being a continued commercial rival is with them throughout. Whereas the Soviet Union, with its completely different economic system and closed economy, is not seen as a rival. And also, there is an element of personal vanity in the Roosevelt, Churchill-Stalin relationship. Churchill is a huge figure in the US. He has talents and attributes which FDR lacks. And I think while there was a very genuine friendship and admiration between the two men, and that never completely went away, it definitely peaked in 1942-43 and declined.
And you mentioned Churchill, so fundamental to this book. Is he the great man of history, the saviour of the nation? In fact, the saviour of what you might call Western civilization, because if he hadn't been there, would Britain ever have got round to fighting properly? Or is he stodgy imperialist, defender of the Indian Empire and of putting down subject peoples, extraordinarily racist views, some of which you quote about the Chinese and the Japanese, that are barely printable nowadays, let alone the views that you would expect a Prime Minister to take? Which of these do you think he is at the end of the book?
I think he's both. And I don't see that that's controversial. What is so odd about the Churchill debate is that you cannot understand Churchill if you don't realise that he is all of these things, and a lot of that is understandable considering the time in which he lived and the length of his career. Churchill had views not just on race, but on women in politics. He didn't believe that women should have the right to vote or sit in the House of Commons. I don't think it's particularly recorded because it wasn't a great debate at the time, but his views on homosexuality or all sorts of social issues which we care deeply about nowadays would, to use a modern phrase, have him cancelled. And yet there is not a shadow of doubt in my mind that the hinge of British and indeed world history in the 20th century was May 1940 and the summer of 1940, after the fall of France, and the debate was whether or not Britain should do the logical thing. Because how could Britain, without any allies at that stage, an empire, yes, but without any allies, defeat a country which had come all the way to the Channel ports? And it is only Churchill's resolve that keeps the War Cabinet and Lord Halifax and the appeasers in check, but then rallies the country and then builds this, or tries to build this coalition, helps keep this coalition together, that defeats the far, far greater racial threat to the world in the form of Nazism. So I think one has to accept all of the admirable parts with Churchill, which I do believe exceed his deplorable and anachronistic views, as well as accepting that he was a Victorian imperialist and had the views of the hallmarks of that education and upbringing.
Well, Tim, thank you very much for joining me. I would thoroughly recommend this book, actually your first book as well, both of them exceptionally readable and giving aspects of something we think we know very well, and it turns out there's more to learn. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I'd also bring to your attention the full interview, which will soon be available on YouTube. His book is brilliant. Do spend a few pounds buying it. Anyway, there's a way of staying with us all day on TV, which is on your screens now. The Queen Mother, when told there was such a thing called remote control, said she had a footman and found it easier. So if you don't have a footman, you can get something to, say, play GB News on something. Anyway, it's all on the screen. Next is the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, are you getting your footman to switch channels for you, or do you do it by saying, watch GB News?
My footman is currently on strike, Jacob, I'm afraid. But I've got loads on tonight. So Tommy Robinson has walked free from prison. I've also got some astonishing footage for you from northern France of illegal migrants breaking into Britain. I don't think they're afraid of Keir Starmer's Kosovo gimmick, are they? And in light of Nigel Farage's speech earlier, we've got some exclusive polling explicitly from the Red Wall. So Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer might want to look away now. All of that, of course, after your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Overall, a bit brighter and a bit drier for most of us tomorrow, probably feeling a little bit warmer as well. Today was a bit dull and dismal for a good chunk of the UK thanks to this tangle of weather fronts that's now shimmying away. Low pressure though still dominating to the north of Scotland, still quite breezy here with a few showers, but generally clear skies across eastern and southern Scotland, and the rain is petering out for most elsewhere. But this line may persist from East Anglia across the Midlands and into mid and north Wales. Still some heavy bursts of rain mixed in with that this evening and through the night. Temperatures, well, we've got the clear skies across Scotland. We will dip well down into single figures, but across the south actually staying pretty mild through the nights, and generally here a much drier and brighter day, certainly across southern parts of England. But there will be this zone across parts of Norfolk, Suffolk, through the Midlands up towards Wales, where it will be pretty dull, still with further outbreaks of rain to come during tomorrow morning. The odd shower elsewhere, but overall much drier day for Northern Ireland. Seen plenty of sunshine today across eastern Scotland, and a fine start here to come tomorrow, but still some showers coming into northern and western parts of Scotland, blown in on a brisk breeze, but that wind tending to ease through the day. In fact, for all of us, the wind's not as strong tomorrow. There will still be that zone of cloud and showery rain. That'll drift down towards the London area, so some showers in the southeast for the afternoon. In fact, generally across eastern England, southern Scotland, one or two heavy showers are possible, but certainly for many, it's a much brighter, much drier day. Bit more sunshine and temperatures higher as well. Now, temperatures will tick up further come the end of the week, but as you can see, Thursday's likely to start pretty grey with further rain. That rain likely to be heavy and quite persistent across Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it'll also be fairly breezy. In the south, though, for England and Wales, it may well get a bit brighter, staying quite murky around western coast, but some sunny spells are possible, and temperatures will be ticking up through this week. Bye for now.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It has plenty of room for your family of 4, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust